You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
I hate when I'm on a flight and I wake up with a water bottle next to me and I'm like, oh great, now I gotta be responsible for this water bottle. Sometimes when people write novels and they just be so wordy and so self-absorbed, I'm not a fan of books. I would never want a book's autograph. I'm a proud non-reader of books. My greatest pain in life is that I will never be able to see myself perform live. Sometimes the thing holding you back in life is your ego. And if I, Kanye West, can let go of my ego, anybody can. It's actually harder to sleep on a fur pillow than you would think. These are a few quotes from Kanye West as I continue the trilogy of Kanye spiraling. Maybe. Again, who knows? All I'm saying is he does have a fashion line about to come out. And he just left The Gap, which was like the primary distributor of his clothing. All I'm saying is there seems to be a pattern throughout his career of anytime he says some wild, reckless shit, he actually has a real business plan not far behind that is about to take effect and hopefully make him money. And judging on the fact that he is literally the richest black man in America, and I took the time because, again, if you've heard some of the quotes I opened with, you have to take what he says with a grain of salt most of the time. So when he says he wants to be the richest black man in the world, I was like, you know what? I'll actually call his bluff. I'll check. I'll see where he's at. I'll see how he's doing. Because talking about Jewish people is not going to help you get that goal, I would think, particularly in rap music. You really want to piss off Mr. Cohen? So I did the Google. Well, I didn't actually Google because motherfucker Google. I did DuckDuckGo, as you should too, and found out that that's actually true. Kanye is the richest black man in the world. He is a billionaire. That is factual. Now, how long will that remain? Because he's been deplatformed off of any social media platform that actually counts. And his response to that, still kind of baller, even though we probably are looking at a sick person unravel, which is sad, but his response to being deplatformed from every social media platform that matters was he went out and bought Parler. And this is a disturbing trend. This is a trend I don't love to see. It's similar to the trend that you've been hearing lately because I guess all hope is lost that anyone running for president, or you know who should be a good president? You know who I think would be good for the office? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the people's champ, you fucking dunce. This trend of everyone thinking a celebrity has to be a president is weird, and we shouldn't just accept it as the status quo now. But what's also a trend that seems to be emerging is any celebrity who becomes deplatformed literally goes out and tries to start their own social media company. I mean, Trump gets kicked off of Twitter, goes out and starts whatever that thing was. What was that thing? Truth Social, that was it. And wow, is that stupid. That's why I struggled recalling the name for a second. It is literally one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Not far behind it, though, is Kanye since purchasing Parler, which is the FBI's version of Twitter for people who don't realize they're on Twitter. It's the social media platform that's free to join, where you can chat with all of your friends about important things like trying to overthrow the government in the coldest part of winter. Of course, being egged on, supplied, and outfitted with military-style weapons, and constant ongoing tactical support from the FBI via cell phone communication. But who's to say? But this is another trend that's weird, right? Like celebrities, people of interest publicly, if they say something you're really not supposed to, and I'm not saying Kanye said anything he should be allowed to say or is actually terrible and he should be tarred and feathered. However, what I am saying, and don't worry, I'll give you the actual opinion as to what is actually the correct way to think on this, but we'll do some funnies up top. It's weird that you just go out and try and start your own social media company. How frickin' delusional are you as a person to think, well, I just got kicked off these these tech monoliths that within maybe a decade or less, depending on the company, have spread like a toxic wildfire / fungus that are probably the cause of most of the world's ills presently. Apropos of that, to think you can just go out and in a day or two buy or create your own to compete with that, not having any awareness of the fact you need people to use it. And who would want to use the FBI's version of Twitter? Turns out half of the population of Orlando, Florida, and nearby Vikings. And FBI agents, it gets suspicious. And I point it out because I don't want to see Kanye get MK'd Ultra'd. I don't want to see him walk out on a balcony in Tennessee. If you get what I mean. A la Martin Luther King. As in, the FBI assassinated Martin Luther King. I also think this would be an appropriate time for me to remind you I am not the news. This is labeled as comedy. Don't you fucking dare click report. Now, the FBI's version of social media is Parler. Now, I kind of forgot about Parler because Trump kind of dominated the off-Broadway industry of cottage industry, far-right social media ripoff companies. Now, Parler's back in the news because Kanye bought it. Now, I don't know what he's going to do with it, but what I am saying is I just don't want to see a man who we know literally is not well, who is sick, have a mental illness, be exploited for profit and those around him. Now, if you were to do a little digging into Parler, you would find out that the current CEO of Parler is none other than Candace Owens' white husband. Now, I didn't need to point out his race, but it is white and fair game. You could make a case maybe Kanye's been had, maybe all of the meetings that Candace has been having with Kanye explaining how global warming's not real because she had to wear a coat today or something else. It's about as much as I know about Candace Owens, and if you know anything else, you're really just trying to prove you're not racist and probably over the age of 50 and white. So, I continue because enough of this low-hanging fruit race jokes, that's not what I do. This is not the news. You could say maybe Kanye's been had by Candace and they kind of ran a 2-point play on him and kind of converted his interest in different ways of thinking combined with exploitation of mental illness, another way to put what I just said, for a lot of money. Now, you know, that's an easy conclusion to draw, but that's also probably not true because Kanye, at the end of the day, despite being literally mentally ill, he is also, and when he says it true and correct, because remember I took the time to check, actually the richest black man in the world. He is a billionaire. So, I mean, like, did he really get had by someone who thinks global warming or climate change, whatever. Let's not unpack it, but just basic. I'm not even saying whether it's happening or not, but Candace Owens' reason for thinking global warming or climate change is not real is because she had to wear sleeves today. So do we think that person was able to get the best of a billionaire who is free to speak his mind? You know, I don't know, probably unlikely. And to take, for lack of a better word, female approach and to flip the perspective back on her, I listened to her once on the Tim Dillon podcast back when it seemed like everyone there cared, and I wasn't all that impressed. In fact, what I was, starting to ascertain from listening to her speak was that she, in fact, might be the person being exploited for profit via tokenism by those she is unaware of. So, I'm just saying, take a look at your damn self before you point fingers. Now, Kanye has a social media company that no one uses, the FBI monitors, and he, I guess, is just going to go there to continue to hate Jewish people, which, in some weird way, I still don't even believe he actually does, if that makes sense. And believe me, I'm not co-signing what he said. I can't be more clear about that. But I tried to listen to Kanye on the Drink Champs podcast. And, another thing I'd like to point out, and not to sound like I'm some social justice warrior or I'm somebody who, cares about you. Let's not, mix bones about that, son. Get it straight. I don't give a shit how you feel at all. But continue to listen. This is not the news. But when I was listening to Kanye on the Drink Champs podcast, it felt like you're watching a dude literally get exploited for something everyone listening is aware of for the direct profit of those people. In this case, the host of Drink Champs. People watch Kanye spiraling. They say, hey, this guy's spiraling. We kind of have a relationship with him. Let's exploit him, have him come here, and continue to spiral. Have him come here and claim that the CIA has fake robot children interacting with his children in his house somewhere. That sounds like a guy who's not going through an episode, who has it all together. You know what I mean? And it's not like Kanye's also secretly working on like rocket propulsion mathematics or something. He's not John Nash, who's like actually doing something with the crazy. This guy is a liberal arts major at his core. Keep that in mind. He ain't a hard science man. You know what I'm saying? Stem this, stem that, okay? That almost sounded like the beginning of a Tribe song, but I'm not going to explore that joke because I guarantee you it would not have ended funny. But it just kind of makes me sad or feel like you're kind of a dick if you're having a guy on for your benefit's sake at his direct detriment. You know what I mean? Take Alex Jones, for example, who also in the news because he lost the defamation suit with the parents of the children who died in the Sandy Hook attack. Massacre attack. Who knows? Anyway, let's not go to court myself. All right. So Alex lost his suit, and he now has to pay $1 billion. Okay? That's so much money he does not have and never will. It's a symbolic number. You know, it's like the judge who gave Derek Chauvin like 26 years or some like odd number just above what sounded nice and normal and reasoned. It sounded like a wink or a nod in some way, shape, or form. The number was meant to symbolically express something, a gesture, an intention, a larger idea. Now, Alex Jones is facing one of these symbolic numbers himself, as he has been ordered to pay $983 million to the families of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Now, Alex Jones does not have $1 billion on hand, because could you imagine living in a world where he did? Instead, he has like a measly 3 or 4, I think, on hand, which is like, you know, it's fine. It's not Colin Coyle podcast money, but it's, you know, keep it up, sport. You're doing good. He is kind of financially done for the rest of his life. And this number was done to, you know, make an example, set an example, prove a point that you apparently are not allowed to say things. No matter how good nor how bad, you're not allowed to say things because, and to be clear, I was doing Oz with Michael Jackson, not the Judy Garland version. Deep ass cut for your bitch ass. Now, Alex Jones is never going to have this money, but it feels wrong to me. It seems strange. It seems like you're making an example that the man is financially insolvent for pretty much the rest of his life. But again, I have to remind you, this was for a defamation suit. He's basically never allowed to earn or make a certain amount of money ever again. $1 billion. Could you imagine getting hit with a fine for doing something? Maybe fine is not the serious enough sounding word here, but still, nonetheless, for $1 billion, you would have to come up with $1 billion. Most people, I hate to break this to you, will never make $1 billion, okay? In fact, Alex Jones is one of the few people who maybe has a 1% chance, if he didn't question the legitimacy of a school shooting, dumb fuck, of potentially at one point maybe making $1 billion as a small business owner, as someone who owned and operated and controlled everything from top to bottom that he was a part of. Now, that shot is long gone and never going to happen ever again. And they've made sure of that fact with this verdict. But he was found guilty. He lost a verdict. And again, the entire lawsuit itself was defamation. It wasn't criminal. There was no violence caused to anybody. There was no threats, intimidation. It was a defamation lawsuit. He is a public figure. It is supposed to be very difficult to lose them for good reason that a lot of people could explain better than me. Because you have to prove like malice or something. The word malice is involved legally. I know, and here's the deal with what I know legally. I know enough superfluous legal jargon to make the average person think I might be a fucking lawyer on the side. I assure you, I am not. But that's just, you know, that's a peek behind the curtain. Another Oz reference for some reason. I don't know why that is. I've never even seen Oz, if I am to be perfectly frank with you. But let's not get off track here. Alex Jones, again, lost a defamation suit where he asked questions, just spoke, just said words. Now, there was a time This is okay. And I know with Kanye and the other part of this episode being about him and what he's been talking about going DEFCON 3 on lately, I don't want to sound like I'm joining a team here because I'm not. But there was a time when the ACLU defended the KKK, who wanted to go give a speech in a rally and have a block party in a town in Ohio with predominantly Jewish population. Brandenburg versus Ohio. I'm a lawyer. 1-800 Coyle podcast. I'll check if you missed the number. Look for my face on your local bus stop seat. Now, that is good. It sounds awful, but what happened was Brandenburg, the guy who really wanted to rally and party as a Klans member in Ohio, was allowed to do that. He applied for all the necessary permits, and they were granted after much brouhaha, if you like that word, because I do. It's why I said it. Now, the ACLU defended the KKK guy. He has to be able to do that. And you know why? Not to give you the same speech again over and over again, but because we let the moron stand in the middle of the street and yell, "Hey, I'm a moron," we now know who the moron is and know how to treat them effectively, which is isolate them until they feel bad and hopefully just leave. Or the alternative is we don't want to hear a word we don't agree with because God forbid we have to use our brain for a second and determine who we are, I guess. That's the holdup. It's much easier if the government just comes in and sweeps them up, throw out your dead, puts them in the back of a sweep truck, you know, the things that you get the motherfucking point, and he just disappears, and he never gets to say anything, and the beauty of that reality is you never have to hear anything you don't like, which, of course, means you never have your peace disturbed, which is good. But that also means a large chunk of your brain is no longer necessary. In fact, the government may deem it vestigial, and you're Jackie Kennedy. All of us used as food for the monkeys currently taking over Japan, or the robots and the AI being developed in California, here. Not to be grim. So, Alex Jones he's the KKK guy in this instance. Let's put it in the simplest of terms that I feel like politically still keep me as the good guy here. Alex Jones, Klansman bad, all bad, Alex Jones bad. Colin Coyle says Alex Jones bad, now everyone can continue to listen. If Alex Jones is the Klans member who wants to show up and say, "Hey everybody, I'm really stupid," we then know who's stupid. We also know what the stupid guy wants to say. You know what I mean? So then we could hear a thought that could be ridiculous, probably is, deem it that in our own head, and then know that moving forward. If you're not allowed to hear a lot of thoughts, if your exposure to thoughts is minimal, you are then susceptible. It's kind of the inverse than what you would expect if you're stupid, so I'll talk slow. It's kind of the opposite of what you would expect, right? The less thoughts you're exposed to, the more susceptible you are to thoughts that could control you. If you only know 5 things about the world and some slick-talking grifter rolls into town and says, "Hey, I have a 6th," odds are you're probably going to be like, "Well, shit, I could use a 6th thought. Let me add a 6th thought. Then I might be someone who can, be a person and stuff. Stop greeting people at Walmart. Fuck Walmart." Or if you're someone who's been well-versed in thoughts, has a few, has had more than several, in fact, has had, let's say, more than 7 thoughts in their life, you will hear at some point the ability inside of your head to be like, "This isn't a real thought," or "My head is full. I don't need any more thoughts. I have all that I can handle right now. In fact, I might actually need a few less thoughts." The more you have, the more you can discern. It's more opportunity to look at what comes in and goes out. It's just fucking data. The more of it, the better, which is why Silicon Valley will take over the world and get rid of people as we know it. But anyway, data is necessary. Data is speech for people. We only know what people think if we let them talk. Now, Alex Jones, let's to bring it back to him, talked, asked questions. He never said it didn't happen. He simply pointed out inconsistencies. The inconsistencies I will not point out because we now have a clear identified slippery slope to get you kicked off platforms. So I'm not going to get into it. It definitely happened. But Alex Jones is, and again, this is a lawsuit that, you remember a couple episodes, Alex Jones's own lawyer, literally his own lawyer, the man legally under obligation to protect his interest, accidentally turned over all of his phone records to the other side. By accident. By accident. Alex Jones's lawyer, by accident, turned over all of Alex Jones's phone records by accident to the other side by accident. So, like, that's a little hard to swallow. If you don't know what I mean, ask your mom. Ooh-wee, ah-ha. But that alone makes me feel like, that doesn't necessarily seem fair. In fact, in a defamation suit where a public figure, it's supposed to be very difficult for public figures to lose. Malice of forethought, is that the term? I don't know. What a callback. It's not supposed to happen. And then also, your own lawyer, by accident, turned over your phone records to the other team. I don't know, buddy. Seems a little suspicious. And then the result of this is you're ordered to pay $1 billion. $1 billion you'll never have. No matter how much charcoal toothpaste you sling, no matter how many other podcasts you go on and just get exploited via alcoholism that you probably have and should admit to yourself. And that's another thing. Just like Kanye, when a man spirals, shows entities that profit from the news, from the media frenzy of someone spiraling, because we all love to watch piranhas be piranhas. Just like with Kanye going on Drink Champs, Alex Jones goes on a podcast, goes on Joe Rogan, they get him drunk. No one else on the podcast, Tim Dillon looking at you again, or Joe Rogan, of course, is partaking. No one's drinking, no one's smoking. Alex Jones goes on Flagrant with Andrew Schultz and Akash Singh, gets drunk, no one else is drinking. And you're watching people whose literal business model for profitability is clicks. It's the same principled model. I'm not saying it's the same ethics of the people involved, but it's the same principled business model of clickbait fucking Gawker articles, okay? And when you're watching that process happen and be funded and energized by someone's literal illness, be that bipolar disorder or alcoholism, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you doing that? I thought, based on the show you put out, you like this person. You care. Why do that? That seems awful. We all know what happened to Lindsay Lohan and Britney. Now, it would be wildly unfair if that happened to people that actually did stuff for the culture. Cheap shot, I know, but it's comedy, not the news, fucko. Speaking of not the news, let's talk about the FBI's likely organized and coerced group of white domestic terrorists who we were warned will be the future of violence and number one threat to America, courtesy of the Department of Justice several months ago. Let's talk about the plot of several men in the state of Michigan to kidnap the governor. Because again, of course, I'm not the news. So back in 2020, 5 men in Michigan who, just judging by their picture, all look like Brandenburgs, if you know what I mean. They allegedly planned to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah, Gretchen Whitmer, to kidnap her for political reasons, because Michigan was locked down pretty hard during COVID. Now, Michigan's a weird state. I can't understand it at all. I sense there's a similar kinship to it with Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania, like Michigan, I guess, is fucking weird. I mean, there's 2 cities on either end, which are great, both respectively, for different, separate reasons. Pittsburgh's a nice city. It's genuinely nice. It's clean. It's a good size. But there's a cons to it as well, such as literally everyone's fucking ugly. I don't mean to be rude, but like, you're fucking ugly. And I wish I was kidding. You're not the cutest of people. You know what? Ugly folks. You're people who went to prom with people you meant that day. That's all I'm saying. Now, Philadelphia is great because, the food, the culture, the sports, and you might get killed. But everything in between those 2 cities is fucking strange. Everything in between looks like what could be some weird, creepy situation where there's like an Amish serial killer living there or something. Or it's just the word Trump painted on the side of a barn still. Now, with Michigan, I would imagine it's similar because you have Detroit, which is like, Detroit, and then there's the University of Michigan and the great sports tradition up there of football. But then there's like Kid Rock, which explain Kid Rock to a kid today and try and see if they can wrap their head around him. I'm still trying. He's like the Captain Beefheart of our time. What the fuck was happening? I can't tell if it's good or bad. I lean towards it's probably bad, similar to Nick Cage, but I keep my heart open to the fact it's pure, unfiltered genius. I mean, the man built a giant mansion somewhere up in Michigan that has 2 rooms. I'm talking a compound the size of the White House that has 2 rooms in it. Think about that. How stupid, dumb big my room got rooms. That's a closet, young Jeezy. What are you talking about? Let's get back on track, all right? I don't want to exploit my own mental illness because we have enough profit. Looking at you, sponsors. So, we've diverted. The governor of fucking Michigan, I'm not the news, was allegedly going to be kidnapped by 5 men in 2020. Now, that trial is going on as well. Now, the 5 men who were allegedly the ones going to execute the kidnapping, what we came to find out about them were a few things. 2 of them were who we just thought they were. 2 of them were FBI informants. That was later revealed in court. One of them was a FBI agent. One of them was an FBI agent. And again, physically, looking at their pictures, they all look like Brandenburgs. They all look like people who are familiar with how and when to use Pepe the Frog. Except one of them, the beard is crazy, and he looks like, if given the right lighting, could pass as also Arab. I'm sensing some ab scam here. Just, kind of like Michael Pena playing an Arab person. Because it's the FBI we're dealing with, the same people that Tennessee balcony, cat on a hot tin, Martin Luther King. Okay, so the 5 men who were really ready to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whittemore, she was lucky it didn't happen because these 5 dudes, they had rounds upon rounds of ammunition, explosives, armor, crazy amounts of shit. I'm talking like an entire military cache of ammunition. It's insane what they had. And all of the recordings and the evidence used, like the character evidence, the anecdotal evidence presented during the trial about particularly the 2 men who actually were who they say they were, presented them in a light that, and again, I just read an Esquire article. I'm not actually an Esquire. Do you see what I did there? I got to compliment myself for that one. That was actually very fucking amusing. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer, but all I did was read an article about this. But what I was able to ascertain from the evidence presented during the trial was that the 2 men who weren't working in any way with the FBI, who, from what I could ascertain, were clearly egged on and manipulated strategically using strategies that are written down in handbooks, were just that. We're just guys who hated how much Michigan was locked down, definitely loved Trump, had racist-looking facial hair, probably weren't people who were on the forefront of progressive thought, but probably weren't people who walked around thinking constantly as to how to be the Unabomber. What I saw was somebody who, over the course of time, slowly but surely, a handler most likely, potentially their friend who has been tapped by the FBI to be an informant, or potentially someone who looks like they could be passed off as Arab if need be, or a racist white guy. There's a very specific niche for the FBI, and they love that sweet spot. Maybe we'll just send him in undercover and do like a Black Klansman situation, and just maybe convince these guys that they should kidnap the governor. What do you think, boss? What do you think, FBI director? What do you think of that plan? I know you said on Friday that you needed me to come here on Monday with new plans as to how the FBI could help improve the safety and wellness and well-being of all American citizens here domestically. And I thought real hard, boss, over the weekend, and what I came back with is we send in our Arab guy to convince some racists we kidnapped the governor. What do you think of that? And the FBI director, I'm assuming, allegedly not the news, this is comedy, said, I fucking like it. Let's kidnap the governor of Michigan. Now, I'm crazy. I am exploiting my own mental illness for profit here currently. But my theory on the situation is, do you remember how, about 2 years ago now, the Department of Justice, who literally is the head of all law enforcement, anyone in America who has a badge and isn't like the deputy of a shopping center, essentially, at one way or another, no matter how you look at it, reports to the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. Now, one could argue there is causation correlation with there being a warning not long ago that domestic terrorism will be a problem. It's in fact the number one problem facing America today, white supremacist domestic terrorism. Now, in this instance of the supposed plot to kidnap the governor, the one of the reasons everyone was so pissed off and decided to try and kidnap the governor was the COVID lockdowns were so strict. So, COVID doesn't have anything to do with white supremacy, nor do masks. So if you're trying to keep track of this at home, don't. I could see someone, not me, maybe presenting a case that, it seemed like we were warned about what the problems were going to be, and then we went out of our way to make them happen. It seems like maybe, it's kind of anticlimactic because you want to believe that there's reptilian lizards from space who are secretly shapeshifting as admirals and generals and in some weird sci-fi TV original series controlling the world because that's fun. Probably not the case. In fact, it's probably the way the government works, the one that we know about at least, who knows. The way it works is probably not unlike your office or wherever you work in that people are allocated money on budgets because you're not a person at your place of employment. You are a number. You are a figure. Now, departments are allocated funds and budgets. Now, you have to spend all of that money because, God forbid, you become efficient with your budget and save money. You will be rewarded for that action with never getting access to the same amounts of money ever again. It's kind of the way the stock market erroneously works here as well. You have to continue to grow each quarter, which is nonsensical, but it is our expectation. So in order to make sure your department gets the same amount of money each year on the budget allowed to spend, you have to be proven useful, resourceful, and productive. Just as any law enforcement agency, kind of in the same way. Do you remember when we found out that some of the largest lobbies behind the decriminalization of marijuana in states were prison guard unions? You dumb fucks, pay attention. Do you remember when we found that out? It's kind of similar to that, where I think potentially the Department of Justice, who oversees anyone who enforces a law, says the problems facing this country that we forecast at least, and have the access and ability and manpower to make happen. I would think if I ever worked for the Department of Justice, and perhaps potentially I have in another life, who knows? I would think a surefire way to make sure that your department, your operation, your group of guys who do things, or gals who do things, I would think the way to make sure you get the same amount of monetary allocation each year, hand over fist, is to make sure that your task force, your unit, your department, your whatever, is busy. You're productive. You're doing things. There's problems. We're solving them, and you got to keep greasing the wheel. We're the Department of Justice. We need to be purveyors of justice. We need to bring to justice people who do not wish for others to have justice. Now, one way to do that is to sit back and wait. That's, how a normal person would behave who was interested in peace and everyone getting along. Or you could take the opposite approach and realize any government essentially is organized crime at its core. I'm not saying everyone involved is bad. That's not true. That's ridiculous, obviously. But I'm saying anyone who's bad is literally involved somehow, some way, shape, or form. If you think I'm insane, I remind you of a little black book that had 2 types of Chris Tuckers in it that went to Jeffrey Epstein's island. One Chris Tucker being not the actual Chris Tucker you're thinking of, but a politician, and the other being fucking actually Chris Tucker. So, anyone could be bad. That's the point of me highlighting the Chris Tucker situation. Anyone could be bad. You got to get rid of this thought in your mind well, not that person. Fuck that. Anyone could. I'm not saying anyone is, but anyone could. And anyone who is definitely involved with the people that are in the government in some way because that's how it continues to happen. So, with that in mind, with people willing to facilitate bad shit so everyone keeps getting their wheels greased, one has to consider why would 5 guys in Michigan want to randomly kidnap the governor because the COVID lockdowns were too strict? Could it be that potentially the mental state of 2 people who were on online forums were just mentally susceptible to bad thoughts? And again, judging by the looks physically of these 2 guys in the trial in Michigan, these were not people that had more than 6 or 7 thoughts in their head. You know what I mean? These were not people exposed to much. These were people who lived in an echo chamber, whose most exposure to other ideas were ones they were speaking out loud to themselves. These are people who don't have a lot going on up top. These are people who are proud non-readers of books. These are also the people I would imagine the FBI could definitely make do something if they want to. You know what I mean? Enter the two friends of the first two men who were later proven to be FBI informants, people who were receiving instructions from a handler who works for the FBI. Now, if you're following the story so far, you identify two guys who are mentally a little susceptible and weak, almost like you're exploiting a mental illness. A la Alex Jones, a la Kanye West, a la people who wanted to kidnap the governor. The next stage of your plan would be to enter two people they are familiar with, they already know, that are their friends, only after they have been compromised and are now informants. This is from a playbook, folks. I mean, I ask you again, January 6th, why is everyone texting the FBI during their attempt to, overthrow the government? You're doing an insurrection. You have a Viking hat on. Essentially, I know you were never going to, but what you're stating in your actual goal is to take over and create anew a government. Why is anyone texting the FBI, LOL, we're in Pelosi's office? What's the fucking going on with that? And just like that, with the men who wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan, two of them looked like they were not wound too tight. Two of them were friends of the men not wound too tight and were compromised by the FBI. One of them literally looks Arab, but could pass as white with the right beard, and the FBI sure loves that. Is literally an FBI agent and excluded from the trial. So, I could be crazy. Yes, I could be crazy. One should ask themselves, are you crazy? Because I don't want no problems with the FBI. Allegedly, am I nuts? But then, one should ask themselves, people get exploited. One of the best ways to do so is to exploit their mental state publicly. If people are susceptible mentally, they can be manipulated. Especially if the people who are already mentally ill don't have a lot of thoughts floating around in their head. If they only have single-digit thoughts, you add a third or a fourth or a fifth, all of a sudden, you're the messiah to a lot of people, and they will do whatever you want. People want to follow. So one has to ask themselves, are you crazy for thinking that? And one also has to ask themselves, when you wake up on a flight and then you're like, there's a water bottle next to me, I'm like, oh, great, now I got to be responsible for this water bottle? Is that fair?